Hi, welcome to my next series of Angular 4, and today we will study how to create Angular 4 services. Now what are Angular 4 services? Angular 4 services are nothing but it's just like a JavaScript function which has got some properties and methods involved in it, and it can be reusable across other components. So if we create some functionality and for to a specific task, then this can not only be used one component, but it can be used in different component injected as a service. So services are nothing but injectables which can be injected. As we know that Angular 4 supports dependency injection, as we saw in previous example, like if we give some parameter in a constructor, then that gets injected. So whenever that dependency is injected, it will have that dependency available on demand. Okay, so now coming to this, back to this application. So taking the simplest form of the application, so we have app component.html which has got h1 tag with title variable bound to it. Then in component, it's in its simplest form, just having one title variable with component decorator, and we have app module in its simplest form, the bare bone structure. So services can also be generated using the Angular CLI, but anyway we are just manually creating files. So we'll have one separate video session demonstrating the CLI for generating components, generating services, etc. So here let's create a file manually. So first step we'll do is let's keep it well structured. So just like we had our custom views, we'll create a separate folder for services, and inside these services let's create one service, a very simple one. Say we call it employee dot service dot ts. So manually we are creating a file. So in service we have to import, just like for component we have to import the component dependency. Here we import injectable, and this injectable component belongs to Angular core itself. So Angular /core. So we have this injectable, and then let's take a decorator, annotation or decorator, whatever you call it, injectable, and no metadata inside this injectable. Just leave it like this, don't give semicolon also, and then you write export class and whatever is the name of the service you want to give. Say I want to give the name employee service. Okay, I call it an employee service. Inside this employee service, so at the moment we'll hard code it, but in the real application you don't hard code it, you'll fetch data from the server side. So just to start with, let's keep it very simple. Let's have some hard coded values, then in the next session and the following sessions we'll make it dynamic, we'll refactor it to make it dynamic when we learn about creating HTTP requests and stuffs. So here let me hard code a employee database. So I'll call it employee record equals, and let it be an array of records, an array of record object. So each record will be an object, say name colon, say first name I gave is say Sachin, say city colon I say Mumbai. Okay, and let me give say age colon say 43, and then we create few more records, similar records like this with different values. So 2 records, say 3 records, say 4 records. That's it. Let's keep just 4 records. say I'll say Dhoni, city I'll say Ranchi, and say 34. Then I'll take say Yusuf, say city, and say age. Okay, now let us take one more. Say Kohli, say city I give as New Delhi. So just hard coding for the time being. That's it. So this is a hard coded value, which, as I mentioned, in a real application it will come from the server side or any other service, external service. Okay, now let us define the getter for this service, or any method, public method through which you will fetch this service. So I'll say get employee object, or just say get employee. Okay, and we'll have a parameter. Say you can pass some parameter over here and it will return you some parameter. So the parameter will be say id colon, it will be of type string. Okay, and let us give a return type also. Even if you don't give it, still you can implement it, but as a good practice, let's give a return type as any. Any means we are just taking a return type as object, but object also of different type. Array itself is an object. An array consisting of object is also a type of object, but different types of object structure. So let's keep it any, and let us take one more variable out here. Let us name this variable as public, say emp, public employee any. Okay, or even if you don't give it over here, we can even simplify it further. We don't require anything over here. Let us take a local variable. Why take a public variable? Okay, so now I loop. Suppose somebody calls this method get employee with id, so I loop through this array. So for I, you write let is just like where in JavaScript we write a local variable. So let I equals 0, then I less than employee record. So how will you write employee record? Always refer with this dot employee record dot length. Okay, and then I plus plus. So it will loop the record, and I'll compare with each record. I'll just write an if condition. If id equals 3 equal sign you have to give for equality comparator. Okay, sorry, I forget something. I forget to give an id. Say id colon, say let it be a string, type of string, say e1. So same way I give id over here, say id colon e2. Okay, say as for example this is an employee id and it is an alphanumeric character, so I'm taking it as a string, id colon e3, and then finally I say id colon e4. Okay, so I'll compare this id, this id passed as a parameter, and I'll compare it with the id of employee record. Employee record, say ith record dot id. If it is somehow equal to this, okay, I forgot to mention this dot employee record. Always we should write it this way. This dot employee record. Okay. Then that means the record matches over here. So here you can take, like here you can declare a local variable let employee colon any of type any. In fact, it will be of type object, but let us, any can be anything, string or object. And here I'll say employee equals this employee object. It is the whole object I have to return. So that means employee equals this. Assign this to this. Once it matches, just assign it this. Okay, and just say break. I do not need to continue with this loop anymore. Why waste the process? Okay, it will straight away come out of this for loop. And here you say return employee, this employee object. I have kept it very simple, but this is not very optimal. Okay, maybe at times it doesn't match, so you have to handle it. If employee is null, there is no record, you have to show record not found. But I am keeping it very simple. You can refactor it, leaving it as an exercise for you. Fine, so our service is ready. Now we come to the component where we want to use this service. So first let me come to the HTML, the template part of this component, and here I will say h2, so employee slash h2, and then I will say h3, say name colon, okay, and then h4 or say h5 for example, h5 slash h5, I will bind it with the name. So I'll take a variable called employee object. Okay, I have not declared the variable yet, but let me write it over here, employee obj dot name. So name, city, age, this is what we have written, right? So just copy it, city and age. Okay, so this will be city and this will be age. So employee dot object dot city and then employee object dot age. Fine. So this is simple, understandable. So here I'll declare an employee public employee object colon of type any. Okay, now if I have to use that service, first I need to import that service. So what is the name of that service? Employee service. From the path I have to give, the path. So the path is services folder slash employee, what was the name of that service? Employee, okay, it's already come, so let's use it. So employee service. Okay, still it won't work. First you have to make this service work, you have to write another meta tag called providers. For service we use providers, and inside this there is an array, and inside array you can give an array of all the services that you are using within this component. So at the moment we are using employee service, right? So I'll give this. Now you are ready to use this service. So to use this service, first you have to inject this service. This is the second step. Constructor, how do you inject it? By giving a constructor. Okay, so inside the constructor I will write say private employee service okay. So let us take this as a small, so to differentiate it from the, so employee service will have the reference of this employee service. This employee service variable will have the reference of employee service and it will be injected. After that I can use it in my application. Then after that let us write one method, public get employee detail. Okay, public get employee detail, and it will return nothing, void and over here I will just call this dot employee service dot, what is the method I've used here? Get employee, right? Get employee, and I have to pass over here an ID. Okay, the employee ID. So employee ID, let us call it as public, say emp ID colon, say it is a string. Okay, so this employee ID I will pass over here. Why should I pass it over there? Because this takes a string. See, okay, I've taken the wrong, it should be get employee. Okay, by mistake I've taken the wrong one. Okay, employee ID, I have to put this dot employee ID. Okay, fine, because this method get employee ID is present inside employee service. It is present inside employee service, if you remember. See, get employee, and it has a parameter ID to be passed. So I'm passing a parameter ID over here. Now from where will I set this ID? I'll set this ID from the UI control. So what I'll do, I'll go back to my template HTML, and over here you just mention input type is equal to text, and I bind it. So I will use one directive to bind it. That directive is called ng model. It is a two-way binding. So I bind it to emp ID. I hope the case is correct. Let's check it. So I come to app component. No, case is different. So I'll just copy paste that. No, it is same. It is same. So I'll bind it to this. So whatever is I type in this text field, that will be assigned to employee ID using this ng model directive. It will act like a model. It is a two-way data binding. And then I'll have one button, and the click of this button I'll call that method which I have, that function or method which I have defined. Okay, and here I'll say get employee detail. Okay, so which method I need to call? You already defined one method called get employee detail. So I'll just call this method get employee detail. That's it. So it will call get employee detail, and this emp ID, whatever I typed over here, it will be picked up in this variable emp ID. So this get employee detail will execute this, call this service, and call the method of this service, and pass this emp ID that I have entered as a parameter. And in this service, if you see that it will try to match this employee ID in this loop, and if whenever it matches, it returns that particular record. If it matches with this record, it will return this entire record. Okay, and once that record is returned, it is returned in this record. Okay, sorry, I have not assigned it to this. I have to assign it to employee object. Okay, so one more step is missing. So I have to write this dot employee object is equal to this. So employee object will get assigned that entire object record of that employee. So once this employee object get that entire object, whichever matches, then it will match either of this. You see these items, either this or this or this, depending on what ID we have given. So this whole thing is an object. So once this object comes, so in HTML, name will display employee object dot name, employee object dot city, and employee object dot age. Fine. So let's run this application and check it. Okay, so we open this URL localhost 4200, as it runs on port 4200. We know that. So now let's give the first employee ID E1. Click on get employee detail. So you see name Sachin, city Mumbai, age 43. If I give employee E2, so name Dhoni, city Ranchi, age 34. Then employee E3, then name Yusuf, city Vadodara, age 36, and then finally E4. So Kohli, New Delhi, 29. So anyway, you can format it. It looks very dull, but you can always improve the cosmetics. So I'm just focusing on the behavior right now. And you also should try to see that if I say E5, there is no employee ID with employee ID called E5. So see, nothing happens. So you need to program it to check whether that employee ID exists or not. So I leave it as an exercise for you. So this was a demonstration of a simple service. So we had hard coded it over here, but in the next tutorial we'll see how we can, when we study about how to create and make an HTTP request from a different server, call the service, and then that service also we can fetch the data and into another service, and that service we can inject like and fetch the data and display it on the UI. So this is how we can create a service. It was a very simple example, so I'll just summarize it. So first you create a services. Okay, this service is nothing but an injectable. So first you import injectable from Angular core, then you have this injectable annotation, then define the class name of that service, and over here define a public interface for that service, a method in fact for that service, through which you'll have a return value and assign it to the calling components variable. And over here in the calling component, I'm taking a variable called employee object. So this calls the method of this service, and the returned object, matching object, gets assigned to this. Once it gets assigned to this is already bounded to this template component.html, and over here I can fetch the name, city, and age. So you see like how Angular is modularized and very clear. It has got clear separation of services, components, etc. So this helps us in reusability and fasten the development process, and helps us in scaling the application and a smooth development process. So that is all for today in this tutorial. So I'll come up with next tutorial on HTTP, how we can create and make an HTTP request, and also we'll continue with further concepts on routers that we were doing previously. But before doing some further topic on Angular routers, we needed to understand what is services. We need to understand a little more about modules, and then we will revisit routers to conclude the remaining part. So thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope you liked this tutorial. In case if you liked it, then please do not forget to press the like button and share it with your friends and colleagues, and also let me know any comments or queries. I'll be very happy to attend to that. So thanks very much, and bye bye.